I would like to remind you that this call is being recorded. And if you're on the phone and you need to mute or unmute yourself, you can press *6. I'd like to start out the meeting by giving a shout out to 4 of our GitHub contributors that have been really helping us out in this past iteration. And those people are Daniel Scott Rainsford, Brian Farnhill, who runs our SharePoint Dsc resource module, Troy Alt, who's been helping us out in xSqlServer, and Tyson Hayes. So thank you, you guys. You guys have been really helping us out on GitHub, and we really appreciate everything you guys have been doing. So in the last community call, we got a lot of great feedback from everyone. And so we're hoping that in this community call, we can get a lot more feedback from you guys. So I think the biggest change since our last call is that we now have a set release date that we announced a couple of weeks ago. That set release date is a week from today, August 10th. So has anybody noticed any differences because of the set release date? Does it help? I know we specifically set it to be 6 weeks after the last release. Do you guys think that's a good time frame? 6 weeks? Too long or too short, or just right? Anyone? Can everybody hear me?
I do.
Okay, thank you. All right, so since not hearing anything about the release cadence of 6 weeks, I think it's pretty good, and I think that's what we're going to continue doing in the future. Some other feedback that came from the last call, or maybe just because of the last call, was that there were quite a few new resource modules that were waiting to be reviewed, but we didn't really have a process for reviewing them to get them into the resource kit. So now we have a brand new process for submitting any new resource modules to the resource kit. There's a link that I posted in the IM to that new process, and it's also in the meeting agenda if you can't see the IM. The new process is that you basically create your new module repository and then set up a full code review pull request of the whole repository, and then that review will be looked at by at least 3 members of what we're calling the DSC Resource Kit design team, which is currently just a couple of members from the PowerShell DSC team who have worked with the resource kit and know how everything's supposed to go. Then once that review is approved, the module will get transferred over to the PowerShell organization on GitHub and will officially join the resource kit. We currently have about 7 or 8 new resource modules open for review. Do we have anyone here who opened one of those reviews? I think I see, yeah, I see Daniel. Yay, he has a bunch open. So great job, you guys. They look really good so far. I really like seeing that people want to add to our resource kit. It's really nice.
Thanks, everyone. The one thing that we would like to emphasize here is, you're basically transferring ownership. So those the code will reside in github.com/PowerShell, and it's now open for contribution from the community.
Yep. Has anybody looked at it or has any comments about it? I know Brian mentioned briefly in his big code review that we use Reviewable right now to do this big review of an entire repository, and sometimes it doesn't deal so well with a large number of files. I've heard that maybe CodeFlow is a good alternative, but maybe sometimes it doesn't deal well with resolving discussions and resolving comments. Do any of you guys have any alternate suggestions, maybe, for other things to use as a review tool? And if you do, please let me know, because I'd love to get that process totally ironed out. Another tiny piece of feedback we got from the last call was that it would really help if we added a first timer label to easy issues in order to help new people be less afraid of taking on an issue so that it's easier for them to contribute for the first time. I tried this out a little bit, actually adding this first timer label, but I called it an easy fix label in the xPS desired state configuration repository. I only labeled like 2 issues, but one of them did get fixed by, I think, a new contributor. So it seems to work out pretty well. And so I think I'll go ahead and add that easy fix or first timer if you guys think that's better. Add that label to other repositories as easy to fix issues come up so that we can help first timers contribute to the resource kit. I do know that from working on xPSDSC that a lot of times like you'll see a tiny, really easy to fix issue in code, but you don't really want to open it as a whole issue because it feels like, it's a tiny thing. I don't really need to open an issue, but I would actually encourage you guys to open up even those tiny issues so that we can add that little easy fix or first timer label to make it easier for the new contributors so they can learn how to fix an issue for the first time. Then there were also some suggestions from the last call that we haven't implemented yet, but they are still in the pipeline. Specifically, this is mostly around documentation, like the documentation for beginners, new contributors in the resource kit, and especially around writing pester tests, your first time writing a pester test. And then also we still have in the pipeline to start moving documentation to the more of the GitHub wiki structure like SharePoint Dsc has. So it's easier to read and you don't have to sift through all these random markdown files in a GitHub repo. So don't worry, we're still working on those things. We just haven't been able to get around to it yet with all the feedback we got from the last call. The other thing we're definitely going to try to write is the automatic style fixer script. Not only just to update all the style in all the resources across the resource kit at once, but also because as reviewers, I know Mariah and I here always feel like we're super strict when we have to comment on a pull request review with just style issues. So, but with that automatic style fixer script, we could just tell you to run the script once and it's all good. So that's still in the pipeline as well. I know we talked about that in the last call. So that's some changes we've made from the last community call and things that are still in the pipeline. I want to open up the floor to you guys. Is there anything else, any other changes that you guys still would like to see happen? Anyone? Anything at all? Updates to templates or documentation or any specific resources? Okay. Well, I can also briefly mention somebody asked me about Nano server resources and how to implement those. I do know with the new inbox XPS desired state configuration resources that have been now merged into the open source, those do take some Nano server into account. a Nano server implementation as opposed to a full server implementation. And the consensus here on our team seems to be that if you're going to implement a Nano server version of a resource, we want to keep it within that resource. So you can look at the resources in xPSDSC if you're curious. But we're not really focusing on Nano server in the DSC Resource Kit right now because we don't have a good way to test it at the moment. So we can let Nano server implementations into the resource kit, but we just have to warn you, I don't have regular tests that will run it right now. Okay, so we have a release coming up next week now on August 10th, like I mentioned before. There's currently 9 modules, I believe, on track to be released. And please be aware this list is very flexible. It can change all the way up until the release date. But the current modules that are on track to be released next week are SharePointDsc, xActiveDirectory, xDhcpServer, xHyper-V, xNetworking, XPS desired state configuration, xSqlPs, xSqlServer, and then xWebAdministration will also be released, but we will also be releasing a partial high-quality version of web administration. Mariah's been working on that. Mariah, would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, so one of the other modules that we've been trying to get ready to be a high quality resource, as well as the SharePoint DSC resource was released, so that we can get comments and feedback on it, is the xWebAdministration. So as of right now, we would like to release a partial list of the resource, or release a partial module with probably about 3 to 4 resources within xWebAdministration as high quality in the WebAdministrationDsc, so that we can test it out to see what you guys think, if it's high quality, if it needs more, if certain things are unnecessary, before we continue with our plan of ramping it up to a high quality resource. So that will hopefully happen for the release on next Wednesday.
Just to add to what Maria said, right? So what we mean by partial is some resources are going to get voted as high quality, and then we're going to pull it out, and also our plan of what we mean by high quality for the community to just comment upon, and then to answer Ian's question, which is moving forward, we would like to see modules adhering to these quality guidelines. And that's something that we might see enforcing more as we take over, as we either author new modules or as we take over modules. We will have to work on a plan on how we're going to address all the existing ones. This is where we will solicit the community support, leverage people from within Microsoft, and we will probably work on a priority order. Everything is to be done at this point. And yes, Katie just put on IM the high quality module guidelines. I would appreciate if people from the community can take a look at it and comment on if you agree with it, something needs to be added, something doesn't make sense, things like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we do have a couple modules that are blocked from releasing right now. They don't have any code updates, so they wouldn't actually be released next week anyways. But just as a heads up, there's some modules that have blocker issues open before I can ever release them. And those are xAzure, xAzurePack, xJea, xRemoteDesktopAdmin, xSafeHarbor, xSCDPM, xSCSMA, xSCSR, xSCOM, xSCSPF, xSCVMM, xWebDeploy, and xWordPress. So if any of you guys were looking at working on any of those modules, please be aware they have blocker issues open right now. It's mostly just somebody needs to go in and fix PS script analyzer errors or suppress them in the tests. Most of them are pretty easy fixes, but I can't release those modules until those issues are fixed. Yes, dealing with technical debt. So, and then I can kind of briefly outline to you guys how that release process works. This was the process that I'll be doing next Wednesday. First, I have a script that will show me all the PRs that have been merged into the dev branches of all the resource modules since the last release of each module. So I look at that list, and if a module has merged PRs with changes that would affect someone using that module from PowerShell Gallery, then it's added to the list of modules to be released. So say like changes to the AppVeyor file, that file actually gets removed before we post to PowerShell Gallery. So like changes to that file would never get to the customer. Things like little changes to the README, little changes to the examples. We're looking at code changes. So even like little changes to a parameter, I would release those, but only if it's a code change. And then once we have that list of modules to release, I check all of them to see if the tests are passing on dev on AppVeyor. If they're not passing, it gets removed from the list of modules to be released. Then we will bump up of the modules left. I'll bump up the version number. So it's usually the second piece of the version that always gets bumped up unless somebody has specified that there is a breaking change. This way of versioning will be changing when we switch over to the high quality resource modules. So then any module in preview still would always stay a 0. number version as long as it's still in preview, and even if there was a breaking change, we wouldn't bump it up to 1.0 yet. It's only once you get past 1.0 that if there's a breaking change, then it would get bumped from say 1.0 to 2.0. Otherwise, we always just change the second number, version 1.1 to 1.2, things like that. And then on the dev branch, whatever that new version is, that gets inserted right under the unreleased title in the README. So all the unreleased release notes are added to the new version. And then I also transfer those release notes from the README to the module manifest so that they will post on PowerShell Gallery. And also we update the module version in the manifest. Then I open a pull request from dev to master. And once that passes, then we merge it and everything's merged into master. And then we use a git tag to create like a save of the latest commit as whatever the version is -ps gallery. And then we push to PowerShell Gallery. There's currently one module that doesn't work this way, which is SharePoint Dsc, because we have our amazing maintainer of that module, Brian Farnhill, and he actually creates a release branch that already has the release notes and the version updated, and it's already been tested. And then I just take that branch and merge that into master and release it to the PowerShell Gallery. I would love if all the resource modules could work that way, but they don't all have maintainers at the moment. So once we get maintainers of all the modules figured out, maybe we'll change this process. but that's how it works for now. Any comments on that process? Anything you guys think that we should do differently? Or anything? Okay. Well, our current goals for the DSC Resource Kit, things that we're really working towards, one is improving all of our documentation and our processes. I know they're not all there right now. Mariah and I have started working on best practices. We also still need to write the testing documentation for beginners. But our another goal that we have, I guess, is to increase the number of resources. So I really love seeing you guys submitting these whole new resource modules that have more resource modules, more resources, because we really like to get that number up, and so that we can cover more programs that you can set up with DSC. And then we'd also really love to increase our rate of contribution. So more people working on the resource kit, more people fixing issues, more people reviewing the PRs, and even more maintainers. So those are things that we're really working towards right now with the resource kit. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to bring up?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Would class-based resources be excluded? I think you mentioned it before you were targeting version 4.
You mean like WMF4?
Yeah.
We actually run everything right now, and at least all of our tests are run on WMF5. And I know WMF 5.1 was just released. Yay! A lot of our resources, we try to stay backwards compatible with WMF4. I know that's important for xPSDSC. But if you had a new resource module that required WMF5, I would be fine with that.
Okay.
So Ian, is your question on central list of like new resources that the community would want to see?
Yeah, sorry, yes. I didn't realize, I thought I was muted centrally, but yeah. Yes, that, so I know for existing resource modules, new resources within the modules, people can put issues there, but if someone wants to see a new module for some product, is there somewhere for people to be able to register that interest?
Yeah, so you can post on the main resource kit repo, which is called DSC Resources. You can post it as an issue, as a like a module proposal, and say, I would like this module. And then if you want, I would say a specific resource, should make sure that it doesn't go into any of the existing repositories. And then if it doesn't fit into any of those, you can always post it as an issue in this same repository, the DSC Resources. And I can mark it as a resource proposal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, for me personally, I'm quite happy to write resources, but a lot of people obviously out in the community, they may need resources for particular products, and is there some way for them to register their interest? So if we're going to put time and effort into new resources, to be able to focus in the right areas is my question, I guess.
Like taking a poll of the most requested resources. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like as Gail said, like a backlog, because everyone can log an issue, but there's no way of tallying up what the most requested new fancy DSC resource module should be, in terms of product support. Just more from a community feedback perspective. Because we could spend a lot of time and effort writing and putting, creating resources that nobody really needs when there's a bigger requirement elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can, like Daniel commented, you can +1 the issues, and then I can go in, look at them, and we could probably tally them up somehow and like post it on the main DSC resources. Maybe not in the README, but somewhere there.
Yeah.
Like what the top resource requests are, so that people can work on them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
We need to send people there to register their requirements, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We could do that.
Cool. I'll crawl back under my rock now.
Anything else? Any questions, comments, concerns, anything? Okay. Well, we got a little bit of feedback, so that was good. And if you guys have any more feedback, I opened up an issue, a discussion issue on GitHub. So if you have any more comments or feedback, please post it there. Thank you guys so much for attending. It really means a lot. Bye, guys.